Hi, my name's Maddie, and Sabell and I put together this presentation on media ecology. So what is media ecology? Media ecology in the book is defined as the study of different personal and social environments created by the use of different communication technologies. So in other words, media ecology is the interconnection of humans, technology, the environment, and media, along with including a focus on both media as an environment and an environment as media. It also aims to increase the awareness of the effects each thing has on each other. So basically, it's the discussion of how media creates an environment and vice versa. So how different media applications like say Facebook or Snapchat create an environment that may be different from one that existed in the past. Marshall McLuhan was the founder who created the media ecology theory. He was an English professor at the University of Toronto, and basically, the theory is best summed up in his famous aphorism, "The medium is the message." He loved to use metaphors and aphorisms to explain his theoretical concepts as seen in the textbook. And while he didn't discuss it in his theory or when discussing his theory, Catholicism played a large role in his life and his theories. He wasn't a Catholic from birth, and he instead converted to it, but he was very deep rooted in his newfound faith, and he attended mass almost every day. And here we have a video that you can watch that explains McLuhan and the theory. And McLuhan believed that the entirety of human history could be broken down into four eras that basically define the media ecology of the time. And these four periods are the tribal age, the literate age, the print age, and the electronic age. And each period is characterized by an invention that occurred during said time period that changed life on the planet. McLuhan believes that the transition brought about from one time period to another due to an invention takes approximately 300 to 400 years. So it wasn't immediately after each invention that the time periods changed. The first time period that he classified was the tribal age, and it lasted until the invention of the phonetic alphabet, which occurred between 2000 to 1500 BC. He believed that during the tribal age, the sense of sight was less developed and the sense of sound was more important to the people living at the time. Due to the quality of sound being greater than the quality of sight, it enhanced the community for the people of that time. As the spoken word was a communal experience, people had to come together as a group in order to receive information. They had to interact with one another. So McLuhan believed that having information being passed through speech was more of a unifying act than having it be passed through sight. The spoken word also lacks permanence, so in order to keep an idea or a story or an event alive, it must constantly be shared, reiterated, and passed down through generations. Due to there not being any books or any writing at the time, anything and any information that wanted to be passed from like one generation to another had to be spoken. So people really connected with the different generations in order to keep all of their ideas alive. And McLuhan claims that people during this time period led a richer and more complex life due to the usage of the ear leading to a more holistic sense of the world, which basically just means that with the greater focus on hearing, people just had like a more fulfilling life. And there was a greater sense of a community due to how information was received through listening rather than just reading. The second era of humanity that McLuhan believed there was the age of literacy. The age of literacy began with the invention of the phonetic alphabet, and this shifted the focus of what sense was more important to sight rather than sound. Written words aren't immediate and don't go away as soon as they're spoken, so reading is a very individual activity. People don't need to come together in order to get information that's written down. So people began to separate from the group and began to become individuals instead of a community. McLuhan also claims that the phonetic alphabet established the line as the organizing principle of life. This is because of how writing is always in sentences in a neat line, and how letters follow each other in an organized, connected line. The third era of humanity is the print age, and the print age began with the invention of the printing press, which occurred in 1450. While the phonetic alphabet made visual dependency possible, the printing press made it widespread. By being able to create letters and books and novels and magazines with the printing press, it made it easier for ideas to be widespread from one community to the next. McLuhan calls the printing press the forerunner of the Industrial Revolution, as it demonstrated the mass production of identical products. Prior to inventions like the printing press, all products were made by individuals and by hand. But with a product like the printing press, things could just be made in mass quantities that were just all the same of a product. With the printing press, fixed national languages were developed, giving rise to nationalism. Instead of different sections of a country each having a different type of language, overall one country would have one language that was solidified within printed documents, therefore giving people a greater sense of nationalism. Despite this new sense of togetherness through national languages, though, there was also an opposing sense of separation and aloneness, as with the continued focus on sight rather than sound, people still had a more individual life than the communities of the primitive age. The electronic age is the fourth era of humanity, and it began with the invention of the telegraph in 1850. McLuhan believes that the electronic media are retribalizing the human race. Instant communication has returned with more of an importance being placed on sound and touch. With things like cell phones, people are able to communicate information instantly, but also via sound, which again brings about more of a sense of a community. Electronic communication also connects the whole planet, transforming it into a global village, not unlike the villages of the past. There is constant contact with the whole world every single day, making all at onceness our state of being. Privacy is a luxury, and once again, people are all just individual parts of one bigger group, making just the whole world a global village again.
So the digital age. The reason why there's a question mark next to it is because it's not certain that it's like the fifth era, but it is a possible fifth era of specialized electronic tribes, um, contentious over diverse beliefs and values. Um, and the mass age of electronic media is becoming increasingly personalized. So you can see this in Instagram, for example. That's extremely personalized to you, to the person who owns the account and manages the account. Um, and that leads into the next point where instead of one unified electronic tribe, we now have a growing number of digital tribes forming around the most specialized ideas, beliefs, values, interests, and fetishes. So I can use a personal example. On Facebook, I'm a part of a group called Dog Spotting, and that's like a group, a community where people post photos of like dogs they see on the street, on their way to work, that they interact with, that maybe someone in their family got, and they post the photo of the dog um, with like a cute caption, and then people like comment on it, they like it, they tag their friends in it. It's like, but it's all centered around the idea that we love dogs, and that's kind of what drives the group. Um, and McLuhan said that it could possibly create a tribal warfare mentality. Um, and if we use Twitter as an example, um, it states in the book that it's a recent example of a digital creation that now shapes our communication environment. So, a media scholar named Brian Ott from Texas Tech University, he claimed that there are three inherent features of Twitter that have altered the nature of public discourse. So, the first feature is the character limit. Now, the book talks about it within the context of a 140 character limit. I believe now Twitter has a 280 character limit now, so they doubled it because people complained that it was too short. But nonetheless, this character limit demands simplicity. Um, this means that there's no room for complex ideas, nuances, or evidence to support a claim. Second, Twitter promotes impulsivity, and so the ease of sending a quick tweet from any place whenever a thought comes to your mind, um, it almost guarantees a lack of reflection or consideration of consequences. So you can just send a tweet off really quickly, not even think about the backlash that tweet could cause, because it's so disposable right at your fingertips. And the last and final feature of the app, is that Twitter fosters incivility. The lack of formality and intimacy encourages negative zingers that demean others. Um, so you can kind of hide behind Twitter and your phone and your account if you immediately just respond to someone like in some sort of demeaning way, and you don't have to worry about or don't think about what that might do to the other person. And so the book uses President Trump as an example, and it states President Trump's famous reliance on this form of social media may be changing the world's social ecology just as much as scientists attribute climate change to global warming. So it's just something important to think about. So it is stated that McLuhan, and his faith, it was kind of one and the same. He used his faith as an inspiration for a lot of his theories and such. Um, and so it's said that he held a very deep faith in God, and he attended Mass almost every day. Um, Even though a lot of people don't know this, two Jesuit priests were of great impact on his thinking, within communication, philosophy, all of that. Um, and although this is the case, and they were of great impact and influence on on his thinking, um, he rarely talked about his faith in context of any theory or any of his theories. But someone did say that his faith forms the ethical backdrop to all his mature work. So even though he never really mentioned it, people that knew him and know his background know and understand, and they can appreciate that his faith really does form most of his ideas. Um, and he did believe that he should keep his personal beliefs private. He was a teacher, he was a scholar, and he did not want to be tainted, and he didn't want to influence other people by putting his own beliefs forward, um, as most professors and teachers do. Um, and although this is the case, he did make a comment during a radio interview. Um, and what the book says is that, um, his scholarship informed his faith, and his faith informed his scholarship. And the quote was, "In Jesus Christ, there is no distance or separation between the medium and the message. It is it is the one case where we can say that the medium and the message are fully one and the same." So this kind of he's using his knowledge on his own theory from media ecology, where the medium and the message are kind of separate, but he puts it in the context of his faith, and he's saying that within his faith and Jesus Christ there is no separation between both, it's just one. And that's kind of interesting to hear and interesting to see. And so there is a critique of media ecology. Um, McLuhan's theory suggests objectivity without scientific evidence. So it uses an interpretive approach to make objective claims. And what the book says is that it doesn't meet most of the standard criteria used to assess, either type of theory. So it's kind of so what media ecology does is that it's suggesting an objective view, but it doesn't really have any empirical evidence to prove that that objective view is correct. Um, and a man named George Gordon, who is the former chairman of the Department of Communication at Fordham University, stated, "Not one bit of sustained and replicated scientific evidence, inductive or deductive, has to date justified any one of McLuhan's most famous slogans, metaphors, or dicta." Um, and so basically, what this shows is that there are people who are, communication scholars, media scholars out there who don't, it's not that they don't agree with his theory, but they're saying that a lot of his theories don't have anything to support it or back it up, which can be seen as a problem because then it is hard to believe if there's no tangible evidence that proves it. Um, and It's important to note, though, that most professors still will teach this theory because it is important. It does drive discussion, it sparks interest in some people, And it's still a theory that people use, so it's important to teach to people that are going into this field. And so we have two discussion questions. The first one is, do you agree with McLuhan's idea that people in the past had a richer quality of life due to their reliance on sound rather than sight? And the second one is, do you agree with the idea that different platforms of social media, for example, Twitter, are creating this tribal warfare mentality?